Welcome to the Policy Committee meeting of the Athens in Motion Commission. Welcome, and the agenda in a minute. But first, I want to give a welcome to Daniel Sizemore, who's going to be our new bike pedestrian coordinator over from Leisure Services. Still doing some work there, so we're not gonna put too much on him just yet. We're gonna try not to. Of course, we still have Stephen here, so happy to have this transition. Daniel, do you want to say a few words to folks? Because this is your first meeting with any of the Athens in Motion commissioners.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for the welcome, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys. I think I've worked with a lot of you guys in my leisure services capacity, and so we're doing kind of a gradual transition, and hopefully I can get caught up to speed on everything you guys are working on and provide context where needed. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. And yeah, and Stephen and Daniel, just let me know if we need to send things to one of you or either. We're happy to do that and certainly want to aid in that transition. I'm going to pull up our agenda. Oh. Y'all can see my screen? All right, I'm going to turn off my video just to save some of my internet. Okay, here is our agenda. We've already welcomed Daniel, but we need to approve this. So today I thought we would talk about our 2021 efforts, and that includes talking about our work plan, which I haven't drafted yet, but maybe we can decide what's going to be on there. And this is really just the policy stuff. And then discuss our other efforts, talk about a strategy for the next tier 1 projects, and then we'll devote time to wrapping up the complete streets policy rewrite. We had 2 more sections to do that we left off with in December, and that is implementation and performance measures. So any agenda additions, reordering?
I move that we accept the agenda.
Thank you, Teresa. Second?
Second that.
All right. All those in favor of the agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Any don't agree? Same sign. Okay. The agenda is accepted. We're moving forward. We've welcomed Daniel. All right, so we've got a lot to do this year. So the work plan is really the policy stuff that we submit to the mayor and I think the commission. I'm trying to remember for just to give them a heads up of what we're doing. Obviously, we want to finish the complete streets policy. We had talked about an intersections policy. Let me go ahead and how about I pull up the work plan last year, if I can find it on our drive. I might have to search for it. I'm sorry, I don't have that ready. Here, just give me 1 second. I'm gonna look for it. Oh, here we go. I found it. Go back to sharing more. Okay, this is what we submitted last year around this time. It's a very simple document. We said we're going to update complete streets policy and at the request of the LRC, the Legislative Review Committee, provide input on the shareable dockless e-scooters pilot program, which we did, and make recommendations regarding pedestrian signals downtown. And I don't think we got around to that because of the pandemic. So it's very simple. We don't have to have a detailed plan or timeline or anything like that. Yeah. So what do y'all think? Thank you, Chad. What do y'all think of these items? Obviously, complete streets, intersections, and that came out of some conversation we had regarding Oak and Oconee Street at both Mama's Boy and at the unofficially named Waffle House connector where the Greenway meets up with the Fly Trail. Now, some of this is really out of our hands, like that was a GDOT project, but intersections has come up a lot recently with discussion about the alignment of the Firefly Trail and staff at the request of the Mayor and Commission putting forth some alternates, including one that crosses a non-intersection, I guess. Where's Crook Road?
I think this is a pretty good list. I mean, we could always add on to it, right? If we run out of things to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Stephen, could we talk again about that idea you had for the small sidewalk project? Daniel wasn't with us at the time, and I thought there was some great thoughts in there.
Sure. Yeah, I'm glad that's on the list. It's, especially as we move closer to the next T-SPLOS, which could be an opportunity to fund something like that. The thought behind it is, as we all know, with the way that Athens in Motion scoring works, there will be certain types of roadways that are always, no matter what, going to be left at the bottom of the prioritization list. And a lot of those are going to be those small residential roads. And, not every neighborhood necessarily needs a sidewalk, but there are certainly some that could benefit from it. And there are always going to be residents who are going to push for that. And I'd hate to just have our answer for the next 20 years as, no, sorry, we're focusing on the big roads. Come back when you're, 20 years older. I think that if possible, I'd like to look at, some alternative funding sources or have us look at a policy for some of those small sidewalk projects, whether it's, similar to some of those gaps that we did prior to AIM, whether it's in tandem with the voluntary sidewalk program, which I can explain a little bit more. But either way, we need to, I'd like for us to look at a policy that looks at options for people in those situations. The voluntary sidewalk program was something back in 2016 or 2017 that allowed neighborhoods to fund their own sidewalks similar to the neighborhood traffic management program. So if a neighborhood said, yes, we realize we're not on the list, this is not going to happen in our lifetime, so instead we'd like to put together like a special tax allocation district in our neighborhood and pay for something like this. The problem with, that's great because it takes it not only, takes the funding burden off of the rest of the tax base, but it also doesn't slow down those larger, those kind of higher priority projects that are on Athens in Motion because if we were to move, a ton of those little sidewalks to the top, that means things like, Jefferson River Road or Cherokee or whatever, wherever we're looking, those would get pushed down. So that's the upside of it. The downside of it is it's not a very equitable program because what it's saying is, hey, all you affluent neighborhoods, you can come out and build sidewalks whenever you want. So, it's one of those, if you can afford it, you get it first type of things. And we're really trying to avoid that. So what I was thinking was maybe this needs, that policy exists, right? At this point, that option is out there for people who want to spend money on it. What we maybe should be thinking about in tandem with that is a funding opportunity for, so that it's a more equitable program for neighborhoods who can't afford something like that to have a capital fund available for them. Whether it's maybe some minimum criteria, I don't know what those criteria would be, like off the top of my head, median income in the neighborhood or something like that, where you can look and see, do you meet these qualifications to get capital funding for these sidewalks? I haven't thought that through at all. So whatever that needs to be, similar to the T-SPLOS that was passed for acquisition of private roads, or acceptance of private roads, where we accepted a couple of neighborhoods into public right-of-way, because otherwise those neighborhoods would have had to pay for something like that to happen. I don't know. My goal would be, we know that this exists as a voluntary sidewalk program. Let's make it more equitable. So that's as far in my thinking as it's really gone. But any way that we could help that happen, and then with timing wise, if there is a funding, if we figure out how that works, we're in a perfect chance to start putting that forward as a T-SPLOST program by the end of the year. So these could really be small projects. They are going to, each of them maybe $50,000 or less is my thought. And we could look for ways to fund some of those equitably. So that's as far as I got with it.
So Stephen, I did have a question, like how does a tax allocation district work for a neighborhood where there might not be any businesses or any people spending money? Like, does it still work?
So unlike a TAD, and maybe it's a special tax assessment, special tax assessment. So all that is it looks at the affected parcels and rolls it into rolls it a charge into their yearly property tax bill.
Ah, property taxes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure that there's some neighborhoods that really would be interested in that. And Teresa and Aaron, you might remember, and this might be information for Daniel, but one of our, I think, short-term Athens in Motion Commission goals is to have some kind of line item for sidewalks. And so maybe this is a way to work in that direction because Stephen, you mentioned capital funds or something, like maybe we can start getting a small amount and have it be for something like this program for folks who don't really can't really afford the property taxes like that. That would be a burden for them. I'm curious, Elliot, if you're there, I'm wondering about your thoughts on this. Like with these programs, do you think that they would be a good direction to go, or do you think that it might dilute the Athens in Motion plan or mission at all? I'm just curious, like what you think about this, what other communities have done.
I mean, I'm not so sure about other communities necessarily. I mean, my understanding, I don't know, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I swear it circles back, which is that I know was it Legislative Review Committee or Government Operations Committee was looking at the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program. And to me, in a lot of ways, like these two programs are kind of linked in how they put again, burden to a certain extent on the neighborhood to either be able to sort of organize, pay, have enough renter or owner occupied houses to vote on things like traffic calming devices like speed bumps or what have you. So it's almost like I would, if the mayor and commission adopts a new traffic calming program, again, I forget, neighborhood traffic management program, like I know they wanted to, and I know part of it was to look at it through a more equitable lens, or at least that's the conversation we had with Carol like a couple months ago. It would make sense to take cues from that on this program. Although again, like we don't have a traffic calming bucket within T-SPLOST, so I guess the funding streams are different. I mean, I think the challenge, of course, is that state funding that we are still required to, and again, I swear this is going to kind of come back around, but due to state code, GDOT is not responsible for sidewalk maintenance or construction on their routes in I think it says municipality, and I'm never quite sure I guess Athens qualifies as that, even though we're a county. Yeah, Stephen's agreeing. So here's where I think when you start talking about sidewalk gaps and or sections that need a lot of work, and in some ways this touches on intersections as well, because a lot of what we talk about intersection problems relative to AIM, you're actually talking a lot about crosswalks and things like that, which again, I guess crosswalks are in curb to curb, so maybe technically, since that's a part of the traffic control device, that's GDOT's responsibility. But either way, sorry, I just kind of dug a hole there. That if we're looking at voluntary sidewalk funding programming, that we would want to take our cue from the neighborhood traffic management to look towards a more equitable system, but also look at ways to improve sections of sidewalk that maybe, and I'm just thinking of sections of sidewalk like on Atlanta Highway, which is or Broad Street, which is literally right outside my front door here at my office, where there may be a neighborhood need, but it's not being met, and it just needs a gap. And again, it's you think it's a GDOT responsibility, but it's not. So
Sure. That's not a tangent. That's not a tangent at all.
Okay.
To go back historically, when the neighborhood or the voluntary sidewalk program was being put together, we word for word took the NTMP language and turned it into a voluntary sidewalk program. So absolutely, this needs to be updated with the equity values the same way that NTMP is currently doing so. So I completely am on board with that. I think what it comes back to is, what's the goal, right? So if it is residential sidewalks, then that's one thing to look at, and maybe it does still go through a petition system with or however, whatever the new equitable way is to get people to say, yes, this is what we want. If it's small gaps on a larger network, then maybe we go back to just a prioritization again, that is less involved for the residents. Something like the GAP program, which is where we filled in some, anything that was a couple thousand feet or less, we were able to get some funding and filled it. Atlanta Highway is actually a really good example where we found, a couple hundred feet that just didn't exist in sidewalk, but there's still a goat path there. People are using it. So we used some metrics to fill in some of those smaller ones. I think we just need to figure out what our goal is and then work from there.
Can I ask a quick question about, how much does, and I'm thinking about the neighborhood I live in, which I'm a renter, not an owner. And there are a decent amount of renters on my block for sure. Like Normaltown, or a lot of Normaltown, for instance, doesn't have sidewalks. And I'm always curious how often commissioners or ACC government hears from those neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks, not because, well, I don't know why they don't have sidewalks, right? Like, why does Willow Run, where I live, not have a sidewalk, but Sunset, it has to do with planning and transportation planning and development patterns and all that. But I'm not sure how much do we hear from those neighborhood associations or blocks of neighbors about, like, why don't we have it in our neighborhood? And like, because I know when Laura and I were on the T-Splosh committee, neighborhoods were coming, presenting projects, and I think we sort of said this should be using that program it's not so much a direct question in terms of we need to answer it tonight, but it'd be definitely good to know sort of in the future. I think the neighborhood was next to Memorial Park, right? I think that was the neighborhood. So it's like, how many neighborhoods are out? Yeah. How many neighborhoods like that are out there? What's the running tally in the last 5 years, or that have asked directly or through a commission, through a commissioner?
I think one of the nice things about this set of commissioners is they really have been passionate about being able to educate themselves and respond whenever they can. That's something that in the last few years, we haven't gotten as many requests, because they know the response in a lot of these situations is, well, now we have an Athens in Motion master plan that we follow. It's not a request-based system anymore. And sometimes that's as far as the conversation goes. We do get the ones that trickle down through staff are more informational requests when they have and there's been less of those related to sidewalk in the last few years, ever since AIM came through. I could go back and gather those, but I do remember prior to AIM, there were a lot more of those than we've seen lately.
I was thinking back to the last time we met, and you mentioned, Stephen, I think it's Sycamore Street or Sycamore Road, that would be a good example, because it's not something that would necessarily fall within the AIM scope, because it is just kind of a little neighborhood street, but there is a problem with safety there, which has been documented.
Yep.
I guess I have a question which goes back to what Lauren was asking. So if neighborhoods can set up these voluntary sidewalk programs, and let's say that they don't they don't qualify for any sort of subsidy or handholding from the county. Let's say they all just decide, okay, yeah, we're going to tax ourselves more to build sidewalks. That's not going to take resources away from anything that
No.
we're doing. It's just a matter of they can just, say we want to do this, here's how we're going to pay for it, and then you all just send the heavy equipment over and take care of it. Okay.
That's right. Yeah, that's one of the nice things about it is it really doesn't impact the rest of the AIM plan at all, because if it's something that the most we'd help with is kind of putting them in contact with a contractor, or maybe some minor design work. If it's a really small project, it could be like a week's worth of our streets and drainage guys just going out there and putting together a couple 100 feet of sidewalk. But either way, it would not impact timeline or resources to the rest of AIM.
Maybe what AIM
Yeah.
can do is have sort of like an advisory role. Just, we should all be up to speed on this program and how neighborhoods can request it and implement it. But it's kind of up to them at that point. Unless it's a neighborhood that really needs some more help, in which
Right.
case, then we'd have to figure out how to do that.
Well, your example of Sycamore is actually a really good one, because I still think it would fall through the cracks. It's a lot of rental units, or I'm sorry, it's like 2 big condo units there, and that would, as far as NTMP goes, that wouldn't be a situation where the neighborhood traffic management program would go into it, because they would say, oh, this isn't a residential neighborhood, this is rental commercial units. And as of how it's written right now, I think the voluntary sidewalk program would treat it the same way. So it still falls through the cracks. That's actually one of the roads that I was going to ask Daniel when we get this prioritization tool to come through, if we could run it through the AIM prioritization tool this first year and see how it comes out. But that's a really good point. There are going to be types of areas like this that will still fall to the bottom of AIM and wouldn't work for voluntary sidewalks. So there's still work to do.
Mm-hmm. So maybe
is...
AIM could just add that to our scope, just once we figure out this whole little sidewalk program, we could add it to our scope and just, so that we're there to provide that kind of support and guidance,
Sure.
for any neighborhood that needs it. But it only goes so far if it's a rich neighborhood like mine, and we don't need anybody to help.
Can I make one quick, and I don't want to drag this anymore because I know we have other items to get to, but the Sycamore is a great example of, and I say this maybe mainly more for Daniel's benefit as a new person within, sort of AIM and the, Sycamore. This is something we see commonly across Georgia, right? Is that you have high density housing, and I don't mean high density housing like luxury condos in Midtown Atlanta, like and I don't want to speak for anyone that lives on Sycamore, right? It's not my place, but dense housing where likely folks are living in those situations because this is where they can afford and this is what works for them in terms of money, right? But maybe not necessarily, they may not have access to the car. They may need to get to transit. So you have high density housing, but not the kind of, I hate the word amenity, but the kind of infrastructure that you think would be connected to high density housing. And I think this, right. And again, I'm not calling out anyone here, but it does show a little bit of that disconnect between planning, which really goes over sort of zoning and how, what kind of housing density or lack of density we have, and the comp plan and all that, and sort of the transportation side of things. Like AIM lives within TPW, which is great because it's infrastructure focused, but there's a planning and zoning aspect to it that kind of gets lost. And you end up with, again, high density housing with folks that likely don't have access to cars regularly, and yet they're not the ones with the sidewalk. And that's a little bit of a challenged disconnect that I think we see. Again, it's not just Athens, literally it's all over in Georgia. Almost every place I've been to in Georgia has that problem.
Yeah, that's a great point, Elliot. And yeah, thank you for that perspective and providing that context. Yeah. Stephen and maybe Daniel, can you guys, this doesn't have to be like in the next week or so, but as we're wrapping up the Complete Streets policy and seriously considering a policy or putting together the small sidewalks program. You help us compile the documents about like the neighborhood traffic management program and the policies that in the existing policies that we have when you have time.
Sure.
Because maybe we can start talking about that sooner than later. And so I think I want to make sure that I get what I put in our work plan, what's appropriate. That this is the policy stuff. This what we just talked about. That would be work plan, and then our next round of tier 1 projects. Do we need to put that in the work plan because we're going to be talking about that? If that's not really policy, we can leave that out. I think, right?
That would be for the entire commission,
I would think so too.
Yeah. Well, the work plan is for the entire commission. It's just like the policy stuff that might have to go forward for mayor and commission approval and staff review, I guess, is what falls under the work plan.
Yeah, I guess I feel like it's more larger scope than what we should just necessarily have on our agenda.
Okay.
The reprioritization policy, do we feel confident or comfortable with how that's written at this point? Do we call that tied up with a bow?
I think we voted on it a couple months ago, and
okay.
So yeah, it's done until somebody decides it needs to be tweaked.
I think it's a good, it's you write the plan and then you work the plan. I think that this year is working that process and seeing how it goes for the first year of reprioritization.
Okay. All right. So as far as the work plan goes, I will type this up and put these 3 items on there, and I will have it ready for our next group meeting, if that's everyone. For we can approve it and then kick it over to the mayor and commission. And yeah, our other efforts will run a project through the new plan prioritization process.
I had a quick question. The complete streets policy, me and Stephen had talked about potentially giving me the next month to kind of go through it. I just wanted to double check and see if that was all right. If I don't know if it extends your deadlines or what, but what are your thoughts on that?
When were we thinking about presenting it to the group?
Depending on how much we get done tonight, I don't know if we're going to have it ready to present to the group next week. And actually, our agenda's pretty full.
Okay.
That makes sense to wait until March at least. So okay. Daniel, that gives you a chance to look at it, provide feedback, and there might still be some holes.
That's perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Lauren, that might also give you some time. I don't know if you've had a chance to talk with Crystal anymore about the equity portion.
I have not.
Okay, so that could give some time to catch up with her as well.
Yeah, I had sent her. I sent her an email and she didn't respond, and I haven't sent her another email like I meant to. So yeah, there's so much going on. So I need to do that. Okay. And then the next round of tier 1 projects, we will be figuring that out this year. There's not a lot to talk about right now, but we're having these kind of side conversations about it. Yeah, it's probably good for us to start looking at those, maybe just on our own to start with. I know Daniel and I had a conversation, and there might be a possibility of getting some updated data running through the scoring system that Tool had, because we have access to that now, right? Yeah, but we may not have time to run all the projects through that and have a package to submit to the T-Splost 2023 group, because I expect, based on the last time we were in T-Splost, the American Mission should start picking people at the end of the year, and the project submission deadline, I think, was like before Christmas. It was really fast.
November. Yep.
Yeah.
And just to clarify on that, I spoke with Stephen this afternoon, and depending on how the language is worded, we may not even need to rerun the entire tool for all the routes to see if there is new updated findings, because the way that the phrasing was done last time was all projects within this tier. And so if we just add on the terminology beforehand that to finish out the rest of 2018 and then add on all the projects in the tier 1 or A or whichever name it is for it, then we wouldn't actually, because we're not listing the actual projects. So we have time.
Yeah, it's the difference between a project proposal and like a program proposal. So this, in the past, the bike and ped were sort of bucket funds that came through, and it was a lot easier to be vague about which projects, as long as we said this is following the Athens in Motion Master Plan and will be focused on the next 4, 5, et cetera, tier 1 projects. The only downside to that is that when people are voting about it, they would really like to know what they're voting on and paying for. So the trade-off there is we'd like to give them some details about what's possible, and maybe have some potential locations already called out, maybe have specific projects from 2018 that won't be able to be funded. Barber might be an example of that, where there might not be enough funds to do Barber with this. So I think there's some middle ground that we'll have to find that captures the excitement of the voters, but also gives us the opportunity to rescore as we need to.
Yeah, ditto on all of that. Yeah, it needs to be a bucket fund. We need the flexibility, and we also need some specificity to get that committee excited, to give them a picture of the possibility and why we need this funding. Yeah, for sure. All right, moving on to the complete streets policy. Last 2 sections. Dun, dun, dun. There it is. I'm going to scroll to our last 2 sections, so it might make you a little dizzy. Oh, yeah, it was, yeah, implementation. Okay, it's been a while since we looked at this. So what we were doing before, Daniel, is we were literally going line by line and looking at this again together and signing off on each. All right. Implementation, item 1. Directors are responsible. Oh yeah. Oh, we did kind of, it looks like we started this section. So I have a note that I need to review the capitalization here. And then we took this out. Okay, so maybe we did do some of this section, it looks like. Daniel, you might have some thoughts as you go through it. I'm going to figure out where on this we left off. Oh, look, I gave myself a little note. Thank you, past Lauren. Let me make sure I have tracking turned on, I think. Item 8, staff capital project are encouraged funding sources. Include equity factors. All right, how do we feel about implementation?
That was the one that we spent a lot of time on because it was very confusing. And I think we got it pretty well sorted out,
Hey,
which is why you were able to put your little note right there.
Yeah, it started very broad with not a lot of weight behind it. I remember, and then we talked through it quite a bit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. And Daniel, just to give context, something we're trying to do differently with this complete streets policy is put some teeth behind it. So that's why, we're trying to say like will or shall instead of some vague language. So you'll see that throughout. I'm going to go ahead and I guess say, oh boy. No. Assuming that we agreed with that. All right, I will go on to item 9. All transportation projects will include a public participation process. Most affected by the projects.
Does this mean to say that, I think instead of complete streets design process at the end of that first sentence, ensure that all users have a voice in, and I don't know, what's the right terminology, Stephen? Helping plan or design?
Capital project design process, it really points back to that public engagement strategy document that Hillary wrote up, which was that was the public engagement strategy for the capital project process or design or workflow process. So if you wanted to say have a voice in the capital project design process, you could. I don't know if that accomplishes what you're looking for.
It just said it seems a little bit kind of circular. We're rewriting the complete streets policy, and then to say that all the projects will include a public participation process so that everybody has a voice in the complete streets design process. I guess it's a little, I don't know, it's a little much for me. Just a voice in the design process, maybe, or
yeah, it's confusing because it's like they're not having a voice in the complete street policy as much as they are the design of new streets and
Yep.
sidewalks and all sorts of things. So yeah, I agree.
So maybe we just need to take complete streets out of that sentence and then just leave design process.
I think so.
Yeah, I think that captures it. What you have there, Lauren. Now, so taking out complete streets, and if you want to leave capital in there, that makes sense because any project, whether it's roadway, sidewalk, bike lane, et cetera, is part of our capital project process.
Okay, so all transportation projects will include a public engagement process that ensures all users have a voice in the capital design process.
You want to take process out of that last. If you're worried about saying process too much, you could say workflow for the last one.
Oh. Yeah, so okay, and we mean users, people who use the project or who will use the project. Okay. All right, next. Department of Transportation, Public Works, community engagement plans. Those most affected
on this one, since we've got a big effort going to kind of formalize and structure the whole public engagement process. I mean, shouldn't we just kind of refer to that rather than, kind of writing a long sentence about what it is we want to do? I mean, we got a process in place that people have worked hard on. Let's highlight it.
Yeah, I was wondering that too, Teresa. Thank you for bringing that up. Does that mean, do we attach public engagement process that Hillary came up with? Is that too much for a complete streets policy?
Is it published and adopted somewhere? I mean, is it the kind of thing that somebody could go and find real easily? You know,
It is, so I don't think it was ever formally adopted. It was approved or accepted during a work session last year, but we never came through like a voting session for it. The manager's office didn't feel like it really needed to, because it was more of a internal, this is what TPW is going to do process. So it's certainly, we could put it on our website somewhere, maybe in the public engagement section of the website to kind of show, here's the typical process for what we go through.
let's do that.
But yeah, it doesn't hurt to have it wherever you want to put it on the website. It doesn't hurt to have redundant spots for it.
Right. I think we just refer to it, make sure that people can find it easily. I mean, I don't think we have to go through any big, ceremony or anything, because the mayor and commission have looked at it and they've given it their blessing, and I think that's really as far as we need to take that, right?
Oh, I think we should have a ceremony. I think it's a great document. Celebrate it.
We'll get Hillary to come back from Atlanta for a couple of days, and
yeah, we need a party. Yeah, no, it really is nice.
I will say, whatever this section becomes, it definitely needs to be clear, because I think you get, and again, this is from more experience across the state, like it's very easy to get kind of get hammered on both ends on kind of bike ped, active transportation projects. Like the people that think there hasn't been enough will say it wasn't in the document, that there need to be robust engagement. And then people that are against it will say only the people that like it got to have and get, like, it's a weird sort of like, you get kind of, nicked from both sides in a way. So I think it's fine to cut this down and, reference to that. But I think, yeah, for some reason, and I think it's partly because a lot of bike lane projects in the state are also as a part of road diets. And so people get really, I didn't know they were moving, going from a 4 to 3, and they kind of, it's like there was no public engagement, blah, blah. So I think obviously that's not going to happen here within the context of this, but I think making sure that it's very clear of what that engagement is, even if it's like even if we do cut this down.
Stephen, could you make available that document for us to just view?
Sure. Let me see if I can find a copy. Though I think the last time I tried to share a copy of it, somebody told me I had an old version. So if you all, maybe everybody can do the same, see if you've got a copy somewhere, but I can find it and send it to the group.
Yeah,
I've got it out somewhere with my pile of documents. So what should we do with this section here? Do we need to be this specific? Do we want to be more specific? Do we want this to be in bullet form? What do we need to say? Use 2 out of 3?
I think we should say that we will, engage in a rigorous public engagement outreach, and that we will adhere as closely as possible to whatever we call that document, and then make sure that it's found very easily. If we want to attack the code, we can do that, but I mean, I don't know that it's necessary to do that, but we could.
You could really strike what you're typing right now, and then strike everything after it that starts with effective strategies, because those are more specific. Those are the specific notes that are exactly in that public engagement document. So, yeah. So if you want to say that it points to some effective strategies that are included in that document, you could, but you don't have to list them all out here.
Okay, so I was trying to capture what Teresa was saying. Okay, so here.
I mean, you could almost say the Department of Transportation, Public Works, community engagement plans will engage in a rigorous public outreach. Like, is that an important sentiment after that, where it says it'll include specific strategies for when and how and who? Or could you just say they will engage in a rigorous outreach, adhere to this planning process as closely as possible?
Yeah.
I think that's cleaner and easier to read and understand.
Did I capture it right? What y'all were saying?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I'm probably the worst person to be the one behind the following along and figuring out what everyone's trying to do. So let me know if that's something. It's just a lot. So input should be augmented by easy to use online methods of participation. I think yeah, maybe I kind of want to strike these two sentences and just say, and maybe this is covered in public engagement, the public engagement process, but that there should be both online and non-online outreach, which we do, right? There's the mailers, there's the information sessions, because think about digital literacy and access to internet. So it seems to me like there would be, at the very minimum, like one of each, like one way, one method of engagement online and one form at the very minimum, which we do more than that.
It almost seems like this was added to say normal input is in person and like in manual, but it should also be augmented, supplemented to include online. And so I think it makes sense to do what you're saying. And since people kind of default to online now, I think it's important to call out the doing both in person and online, or mail, or whatever terminology you'd use for that.
Yeah. Digital is such a word from 2000, the year 2000. The word digital, both
About
online
and the old way, whatever it is.
Yeah, I can't think of the
Yeah,
word.
online and in person. I mean, I think those are
online
really the two.
and Stone Age,
And in person.
well,
Is it in person, or because
not
even
just
like mailers?
maybe just say in multiple through multiple channels to make sure that all citizens have an opportunity.
What about physical, online and physical input?
Input and outreach.
In person,
Outreach and input.
does in person not work?
I think in person, I mean, for most of I'm doing a lot of virtual events right now, but I also specify sometimes in person. And that's kind of, it seems, and I work with, graduate students, early 20s, and they seem to use in person a lot versus virtual, or not that we did use virtual, but online. But I think in person really does a good job.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess mailers, the question of whether I guess mailers are technically engagement, but I always think of mailers more as public notice versus engagement. And I guess, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So and there's the difference between public notice, which is telling people something's happening, versus public engagement, which to me means something's happening and we want to know what you have to say about it. So I don't know if that's a distinction. Again, I don't want to get in the weeds on the distinction between those two things, but
yeah, I see what you're saying. Sorry. We can focus on for this is really about the engagement. And will adhere to the established public engagement process closely possible. Shall be both online and in person. Common opportunities. should we add something like as feasible? I'm just thinking about the pandemic, right? Like as practical as is safe to do so. I don't know.
Well, so with our public input in leisure services, we're still doing, normally we would do all in-person meetings, but we still kind of feel like we have to do at least one. So um, I don't know that there needs to be a qualifier there. I am
Okay.
curious with the, sorry, just to jump to the previous sentence real quick, adhere to the established public engagement process. I know there's been talk within ACC Gov to create a government-wide process of engagement. And so I think it falls within this, but I just kind of wanted to see, like, are we going to refer to the actual document that we have published or will publish on the website? And if so, could we also throw in some extra verbiage that would say either, we'll stick to this or whatever approved government-wide process. That way it doesn't look like we're branching off from what maybe public information would want us to do.
Okay.
I don't know the words that would describe that though. I mean, Stephen, what
Daniel,
do you think?
so with PIO though, they're talking more about the format of public engagement. We're talking about like the process of, it's not necessarily the vehicle of how you're engaging with them. It's just saying, here are the steps. That public engagement strategy plan that Hillary put together it was mostly focused on, here's the steps of how a project's built out, and here's how public engagement fits into those steps. And then it had a list at the bottom that said, here are examples of good public engagement strategies, like the vehicle of how to get that communication going. But it was really focused more about fitting public engagement into the process.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure because, I know they've had some conversations about it at a like interdepartmental level, but I wasn't sure if there was that meeting about public engagement a few weeks ago. And so.
Yeah. So, and being there, it was really about like, okay, once we know that this is the time for public engagement, what are we actually doing to make sure that happens? So is it story map? Is it GIS story maps? Is it pop-ups in a parking lots? What is it? So those go back to the kind of the strategy, not necessarily the workflow process.
Okay. Yeah, not actually having seen y'all's workflow process. I guess I kind of imagined that it was strategies, but that's good to know. Okay.
I'm looking through my tons of emails right now to see what I can find it.
Yeah. Okay, y'all. So it's already past 6 o'clock, and I want to respect everyone's time, especially you guys, Daniel and Stephen, because I know y'all have to do a lot of late meetings. So we got started back in it. We're trying to ramp it back up. We got one item kind of done, but that's good because it'll give Daniel a chance to kind of look at things and form an opinion, form some thoughts around that, get up to speed. So let's go ahead and establish when our next meeting is, since we're all here together. And we've been around either a week or 2 weeks before the regular meeting. So our next, after the February full Athens in Motion Commission meeting, the next one is March 23rd. Wednesday, March 10th, or Wednesday, March 17th. We've kind of been doing this roughly on Wednesdays. Are either one of those better for folks? I don't know what the mayor and commission calendar is looking like or what y'all's obligations are, Daniel and Stephen.
Lauren, one thought, if we really want to focus on getting complete streets done, we may need to bump up maybe 2 meetings in a month for the next month or two. I don't want to put more meetings on people's schedules, but I'm certainly willing to do it.
I think that's a good idea. Otherwise, this will just take forever.
Yeah.
I can't do
Yeah.
the 10th, so just unfortunately not. Can't make them. I'm leaving for Okefenokee that
Okay.
evening.
Awesome. Okie finokie. One day I'll make it down there.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right. What if we, okay, let me think about this. Understanding that the group is willing to do 2 meetings in a month, what about the March 3rd and March 17th?
That works for me.
I can do both those.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if everyone can't make both, that's okay. But we'll go ahead and get it on the calendar if that works.
Third might be tough, but I can definitely make the 17th. Third might be tough, but if not, I can make, have one-on-ones.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the 3rd and the 17th. We're gonna get it done.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
great.
5 o'clock. You want me to set those up for 5 o'clock, both of them?
Please, yeah. Oh man, that's after the Mayor and Commission voting session. Dang. I was gonna try and take it easy after that. Nope. The work must be done.
No rest for the wicked.
Always something else to do.
Well, yeah, got to keep the ball rolling. All right. Well, thank y'all for meeting. I will see you next Tuesday at our full commission meeting. That's between 4 and 6. And it's going to be really exciting because we're going to talk about Barber Street. It's be fun.
Cool.
Yeah. So everyone stay safe and healthy. And yeah, I guess I'll.
Warm.
Yes, stay warm. Oh my gosh. Yes. All right. Farewell.
Here, y'all.
All right, y'all. Good night. See ya.
Night.
Yeah.